UN News.
Speaking of decolonizing your mind space, you've probably been seeing, Collin, a lot of like, especially Western European countries finally giving some like, you know, a little bit of pats on the head over there, giving some recognition to Palestine. So I have this from Jonathan Cook, right? He published it first in Middle East Eye, right? This is over at antiwar.com, which go bookmark antiwar.com. They do good stuff. But recognition of Palestine is a repeat of the West Oslo's peace fraud. Britain's Keir Starmer is already pulling the rug from under his own grudging declaration. The only hope of change is of unintended consequences variety. Yeah. So, the reluctant recognition of Palestinian statehood by Britain, France, Australia, and Canada this week is a con. Is the same switch and bait that has been blocking the creation of a Palestinian state for 3 decades now. Imagine that these 4 leading Western countries had recognized Palestine not in late 2025, when Palestine is in the final stages of being eradicated, but in the late 1990s, during a period of supposed Palestinian state building. This was when the Oslo Accords were signed with Western backing. The PA was established under Yasser Arafat, with the apparent aim that Israel would gradually withdraw from the territories it still occupies in Gaza, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem, and began ruling an emergent Palestinian state. At Israel's insistence, let us note, the Oslo Accords carefully avoided any mention of the ultimate destination of this process. Nonetheless, the message from Western politicians and media was the same. This was heading towards a Palestinian state living in peace alongside Israel. Looking back, it is evident why that did not happen. When it still looked feasible, the Israeli leader at the time, Yitzhak Rabin, told the Israeli parliament that his vision was not of a state, but of an entity, which is less than a state. A glorified Palestinian local authority utterly dependent on its bigger neighbor Israel for its security and economic survival, which it still is. The Israeli leader at the time, right? Economic survival and all that. After Rabin was, I double pulled. After Rabin was assassinated by a far-right Israeli gunman, his successor, Netanyahu, was propelled into power by a majority of the Israeli public on a mandate to stop the Oslo process in its tracks. He repeatedly reneged on commitments to withdraw Israeli soldiers and Jewish settler militias from the occupied West Bank. In fact, in this period of supposed peacemaking, Israel colonized Palestinian land at the fastest rate ever. In 2001, why does that come up over the thing? Huh? Why? During his time in, I'll do it again, opposition, Netanyahu was secretly caught on camera explaining how he achieved this reversal. And I'm telling you, BB, in the most intimate forum, really, where nothing is supposed to leak out, we feel that everybody speaks to us differently when not in office. But when they step into office, some crown falls on their heads, which nails them to a different behavior. Why is that so? What's going on? Turn off the camera and then perhaps we can develop. Minutes later, the camera's turned on again. Today, everyone understands the slogan, "The settlements are here." It is everywhere. What's the difference? What do you think Arafat wants? He wants one big settlement that's called Tel Aviv. As far as they are concerned, I think the territorial waters are also theirs. Then they want us to be pushed into the sea. It's obvious, but only further away. First of all, main thing is to strike them, not once, but several times, so painfully that the price they pay will be unbearable. So far, the price tag is not unbearable. I mean a large-scale attack on the Palestinian Authority, causing them to fear that everything is about to collapse. Fear is what brings them to hold on, but then again, the world will say that we're aggressors. Sound familiar?
Yep.
They can say whatever they want. Aren't you afraid of what they'll say, BB? No, BB says. Especially today with the with the US, I know how they are. America is something that you can easily maneuver and move in the right direction. And even if they say something, so then they say something. So what? It's absurd. We have such support there, and here we're thinking what we should do if. Look, I wasn't afraid to maneuver the Clinton administration. I wasn't afraid to confront Clinton. I wasn't afraid to go against the UN. What happened with the Oslo Accords? The Accords, which were ratified by Parliament. I was asked before the 1996 elections, will you fulfill them? I said yes, subject to reciprocity and minimizing pullouts. But how can one minimize the obliged pullouts? I got my own interpretation to the agreements in such a way that will allow me to stop the race back towards the 1967 borders. How did we manage to do this? Nobody defined what military facilities are. So I also defined them as being security zones. The entire Jordan Valley for me is a military facility. Like the Bet Shean Valley, you see, go figure. But then there was the question of who defines these military facilities. I received a letter from Secretary of State Warren to me and to Arafat at the same time, saying that Israel and Israel alone will define the military facilities, their locations, and size. Now they didn't want to give this letter, so I refused to ratify the Hebron Accords. I stopped the government meeting and I said, I won't sign. And only when the letters arrived during that meeting to me and Arafat, I signed the Hebron Accords. Or ratified it, to be exact. Why is this important? Because at the very moment, in fact, I halted the fulfillment of the Oslo agreements. It's better to give 2% than 100%. And this is the choice we're facing. You gave 2%, but you stopped the withdrawal rather than 100%. The wisdom is not to be there and break, but rather to be there and pay the minimum. So, yeah, I mean, we've heard all that kind of shit before. Interesting to hear it back in, when was this? 2001?
Yeah.
You know? So that was happening under everyone's noses at the time. So he had said he had held on to Palestinians, Palestinian territory in violation of the Oslo Accords by imposing my own interpretation to the agreements, so that vast swaths could continue to be defined as security zones. He added, I halted the fulfillment of the Oslo Accords. Was there not pushback from Western powers, he was asked? America is something that you can easily maneuver and move in the right direction. So Barack Obama entered office with a grand vision of peace that was quickly sunk by Israel's refusal to stop expanding its illegal settlements and stealing more land in the West Bank needed for a Palestinian state. Donald Trump's 2020 hyped deal of the century plan, conducted over the heads of the Palestinian leadership, dressed up annexation of large parts of the West Bank as Palestinian statehood. Trump's team also considered a plan to economically incentivize on the most charitable interpretation, Gaza's Palestinians to relocate to Egypt's Sinai Desert. So we talked about that not that long ago, correct? As did me and Indy when that information came out the first time. In reality, these 2 decades of time wasting while Israel carried on brutalizing the Palestinians and taking their land incentivized not peace, but greater Palestinian resistance, culminating in Hamas's one-day breakout from Gaza on the 7th of October. Israel's response was a genocide, one in which Joe Biden became an active partner from the outset, sending bombs to help level the enclave and providing diplomatic cover. Meanwhile, Israel accelerated its de facto annexation of the West Bank undisturbed. Trump's latest contribution has been unveiling a Gaza Riviera plan in which whoever survives of the 2.3 million Palestinians there is cleaned out and the enclave rebuilt with Gulf money as a playground for the rich. So we've covered this AI video before, right? But this, like, we've also covered fucking Donald Trump generally using AI as a tool for propaganda, you know? So, but yeah, I mean, Netanyahu, Musk, they're all here. We get gold Trump balloons. Isn't that nice? So, yeah, it's great. Great bullshit. American bullshit, as they say. So, echoes the U.S. president's recent comments on the future of Gaza.
I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad. This could be so magnificent.
It's going to be the best. It's going to be the best ever. So, meanwhile, that same Trump peace plan, right, is the Pope. Pope is hopeful that Hamas will accept it. What do we know about Hamas accepting deals? They've done that already. Like, so Vanessa Beeley, American Pope, accepts American peace plan for Gaza and urges Hamas to accept the total disintegration of Palestinian rights and statehood. Who would have guessed? Me. I would have. Thank you. I would have guessed that shit. So look at that. It's me. Reports this week of a watered-down version of the plan suggest none other than Tony Blair, the war criminal who oversaw the destruction of Iraq 2 decades ago, with old W. Bush, may be appointed effective governor of a Gaza in ruins. So why now, after 30 years of the West conspiring in this slow-motion eradication of Palestine, a state long recognized by the rest of the world, have several Western capitals broken ranks with the U.S. and recognized Palestinian statehood? The short answer is that such recognition is now relatively cost-free. Saying, it's too late. It doesn't matter. It's too late. In typical fashion, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer made the announcement as he pulled the rug from under his own act of recognition by dictating what kind of state Palestine would have to be. Not a sovereign one in which the Palestinian people made their own decisions, but one that echoed Rabin's entity less than a state. Starmer insisted Hamas, Gaza-elected government, and one of Palestinians' 2 main political factions could play no part in running this state. The Palestinian state would also, of course, have no military to defend itself from the genocidal state next door. Starmer insisted Hamas, Gaza's elected government, one of Palestine's 2 main... I read that already. A report that this week in the Telegraph indicates that even after formal recognition, Starmer is still imposing new conditions designed to hollow out his declaration. They include demands for new Palestinian elections that can only take place with Israel's permission, which it will not give. An overhaul of any latent Palestinian nationalism Israel objects to in the Palestinian education system, even as Israel's own education system has long been laced with genocidal incitement. A requirement that the PA not compensate families of anyone Israel declares a terrorist, which pretty much covers any Palestinian killed or jailed by Israel. So that's Keir Starmer's deal. In other words, the Palestinian state recognized by Starmer is envisioned as the same sham, completely dependent entity Israel has been abusing for 30 years. That was always the West two-state vision. So, but the deeper truth Starmer's recognition is intended to obscure is that if there's no Palestinian territory left, Gaza is raised and its population dead or cleansed and the West Bank annexed. Statehood becomes moot. That is what is meant when the media talk about recognition being chiefly symbolic. Starmer and others see it as amounting to little more than a retrospective rap on knuckles for Israel not playing fair. It is a cost-free exercise because, while Israel feigns indignation about recognition serving as a supposed reward for terrorism, it and its patron in Washington know nothing tangible is really at stake. If the Trump admin were vehemently opposed to symbolic recognition, as earlier admins appear to have been, when statehood might have been realizable, who really imagined Starmer or Canada's Mark Carney would have dared step out of line? Further, recognition sends an entirely false message to their own publics that these Western capitalists are doing something for the Palestinians, that they are standing up to Israel and behind it the U.S. Starmer is especially keen to send such a message when he is about to face an annual Labour Party conference 2 years into a genocide he's been openly backing. Recognition is a giant deflection exercise, an image-laundering operation that ignores the substantive reality that, aside from this symbolic act, these Western states continue to arm, train, and provide Israel with intelligence, trade with it, and give it diplomatic support. Starmer still warmly greets in Downing Street the Israeli president Yitzhak Herzog, who at the outset of the slaughter in Gaza offered the central rationale for genocide, arguing that no one in Gaza, not even its 1 million children, were innocent. Not only will recognition of Palestine not improve the situation of Palestinians, but it will not demand any change of behaviors from Israel and its Western patrons either. It will continue to be business as usual. But there is a final reason why some Western governments are now raising their voices in support of statehood: to save their own skins. Unlike Washington, which treats with open contempt international law and the international courts invested with upholding it, many U.S. allies fear their vulnerability. Unlike the U.S., they have ratified the Convention Against Genocide, and they are subject to the jurisdiction of the ICJ, which can put their officials on trial for complicity in war crimes. This month was marked not just by recognition of Palestine by Britain, France, Canada, Australia, Belgium, Portugal, and a handful of small states. Far less noticed, 18th of September was the deadline set by the UN General Assembly for Israel to honor a ruling last year from the ICJ that it's withdraw its unlawful presence from the occupied territories. It is not just that Israel is flouting this resolution. The international community's attempt to implement the World Court ruling over the past year, Israel has headed in exactly the opposite direction. It has intensified its destruction and ethnic cleansing and is poised to annex the West Bank. Entirely separate from the issue of genocide, the UN resolution also requires states to end arms transfers to Israel and enforce sanctions until it ends the occupation. Britain and the others presumably hope that they can cook the books to argue that they did not understand there was a genocide in Gaza until it was all but over, at the point a year or two down the road when the ICJ issues its rulings. But they cannot make that same argument, we did not know, about the World Court ruling of the illegality of the occupation. It should hardly need pointing out that dismantling the occupation of the Palestinian territories is the flip side of establishing a Palestinian state. They go hand in hand. Britain and others need an alibi, evil as it is, to argue that they are respecting the ruling and not be complicit in aiding the occupation, even as their actions prove the precise opposite. They are not only helping to prop up the genocide in Gaza, their trade ties, arms sales, intelligence sharing, and diplomatic maneuvers are also essential to the maintenance of Israel's illegal occupation. If there is a small hope to be derived from these Western states grudging recognition of statehood, it is the unintended consequences. Of the unintended consequences variety. Recognition may yet force on their leaders linguistic and legal gymnastics so extreme that they are further discredited with their publics and pressure grows inexorably from more meaningful change. Either way, Israel's ever greater pariah status seems guaranteed. Collin, thoughts?
I mean, it's very obvious this was all bullshit, and it was just nothing more than a sabak measure. I think they're thinking, in my mind, to kind of appease people who have been pro-Palestine, who've been calling for the West to do something over the last few years, that they're thinking like, oh, if we just do this, but not give any details, then that'll be enough. And, and we talked about this maybe, I think a couple of weeks ago now, in terms of, in the UK, I forgot who it was, but they're kind of demanding reparations for Palestine now. So the fact that, like that, even in that story, that hasn't been, as far as I know, a major story, which to me would kind of imply that if the UK was serious in making Palestine a state, that should be a part of the conversation as well. So, but the fact that they are not having that conversation, yeah, this is just bullshit. So, but I don't think I don't think it's going to work though, because I think a lot of people, especially younger people, are seeing right through it and won't stand for it. But I think it speaks to our politicians how low or how dumb they think of us, that they would believe that people will actually believe that this is a thing. Yeah, there's just no. And then in order for you to be really free from Israel, I mean, from Palestine, or for Palestine to be truly liberated, Israel has to be out of the picture.
Yeah.
So there's no discussion on that. So even that in of itself is just kind of like, you're not serious.
Yep. Well, this is just playing out the clock to me, like just hopefully no one notices, till that buzzer goes and we can all wipe our hands of it and move on. That's what they're hoping for,
right.
So, and a couple of distractions, is all they need. So keep that ball moving. But talking about that sort of thing is certainly why YouTube's demonetized us. So you can scan that QR code you see on your screen or go to ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. Leave us a few dollary dues. And if you don't want to do that, look, super simple. Same thing every other channel asks you. Like, subscribe, share the video. The only way it gets seen. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think. You think this is peace on the horizon or same as usual? Which one, Western man? Otherwise, thanks for watching.